Hi, welcome back to our kitchen. One of the things when people switch over to a whole food plant-based way of eating, they find hard to find in stores is a whole wheat cracker. Not that we eat a lot of crackers, but crackers have a nice crunch. You like to put them in your hummus and dip. And most of the store-bought ones are very expensive. Typically have oil, may have sugar, lots of added things you don't want, and they're just so darn pricey. Well, I started making my own crackers and I love them, and it's using my sourdough starter. And it's so easy to use. Now, those that don't have a sourdough starter, don't worry, I'm going to be doing a video on sourdough starter, but there's tons of them out there on the internet that you can find the information. And the thing is, you have to feed the starter often, and you have to discard some of your starter. Well, that discard, that stuff that would normally get thrown out, we're going to use to make crackers. And there's only two ingredients: flour and your starter. It's great, it's easy, and I'll show you how. Today for our crackers, as I said, we only need two things: some nice whole grain flour. I'm using whole wheat bread flour today, and I have my cast off starter because I made some sourdough bread today. So all we're going to do is scoop all that sour out, and it's a simple 1-to-1 ratio. We're just using the same amount of starter to the same amount of flour. It's that easy. So it's really simple to use. If you have a half a cup of starter, you put in a half a cup of flour. So I'm going to start with a cup and get that worked in. And all you're doing is letting the starter absorb all that flour. Now I start with a little less, just in case, because I sort of eyeballed this, but I had about a cup and a half of starter. And I want a nice dough when I'm all done. Actually, I think I'm going to leave it at about that. Switch to my hands so I can get all the little bits of dough. And you're just going to knead it just enough to incorporate all the flour until you have a nice flexible dough. You don't have to knead it a lot either. We're going to be rolling this out, and we don't have to develop a lot of gluten in it. We just have to get it to all hold together. So here's my dough. It's nice, it's not too stiff. It. You do want to knead it enough that it'll start to, it should get a little stiffer with kneading, but you just want it so it's sort of a smooth, nice dough. And then we're going to let this sit for about 10 minutes, just to let it relax. We'll be back in a few minutes. Now, what's nice about sourdough is sourdough has flavor itself. And you can, after you make these crackers, before you bake them, you can let them sit for an hour or so, or a couple hours, if you want a lighter cracker or something with even more flavor. We're going to use these pretty immediately, and where a lot of the flavor besides the sourdough is going to come from is by our toppings. You can use sesame seeds, poppy seeds, any kind of seeds you really want. You can use spices. You could color the dough if you wanted with like turmeric. You can put garlic and salt on. What we're going to use today is a family favorite of ours, everything but the bagel seasoning. You can find this in a lot of places. We got ours at Trader Joe's yesterday. We just like the flavor of this a lot, and it makes a wonderful cracker. So we've let this dough rest for a little bit. And now for making the actual cracker, you have a couple things you can use. You can use a rolling pin to roll it out if that's all you have. You may have a pasta maker that some relative gave you years ago and you only use once a year to make pasta, if that. Or if you're lucky like me, I have one for my KitchenAid mixer that I use. This is great to get a nice even cracker made out of this. And so I'll show you how I use it on the mixer, but you could roll this out by hand. So I have my dough, and I'm just going to cut this into smaller bits so I can go through the pasta maker. I'm just going to use a little flour, not a lot, and I'm going to flatten it out, and just so I can get it through the lowest setting on my pasta maker. So this is developing the gluten in the dough as we're doing this. You can use a knife or you can use a pizza cutter for this. And I'm going to move it up a level. And these don't have to get real thin. I typically do this at about setting number 3 on this. If you like a thinner cracker, you could go thinner. But that just makes the perfect size on my sheet. So now I have my crackers, some of my crackers done. And all I'm going to do is score them gently. You can score them with a knife, or you can score them with like a pizza cutter. I don't want to go too deep because I don't want to cut into my silpat sheet underneath. And I just do it enough to score it. And that'll be enough that when I'm all done, these will break nicely into the shapes that I want them. And you can do them any which way you want. And as big as you want. Then all I do is take my bagel seasoning, sprinkle it on top. What I like about the Trader Joe's seasoning is it has salt already added. You could add salt to the dough if you wanted to. We typically don't. There's enough, but you can get some, everything but the bagel seasonings another place. Like I think the Costco brand one doesn't have salt in it. Once you have your dough all rolled out and seasoned the way you want, you can put it in the oven. We put it in 350 degrees and we put it in there until they dry out completely. They'll start to brown and they're crisp from the center all the way out. Our first batch of crackers came out and they're nicely toasted. They're dry throughout and they break so evenly where we scored them. This is a great, simple, easy recipe. I hope you try it, and please subscribe to our YouTube channel. And shortly I'll make another video on how to make a sourdough starter. Thank you for joining us, and eat plants love. Thank you for coming into our kitchen. Eat more plants and love without limits.